Good morning, America. Welcome back to Taxes Made Easy. We've got a lot of information to cover. I'm excited for this today's show. It's a new week, and we've got 2 weeks until tax day. Woo! Let's not all celebrate at once. So we've got a lot to cover today. One of the biggest things I want to focus on is how to avoid being hit by an audit. How do you avoid having issues with the IRS? And it all comes down to how do you prepare your tax returns and who do you choose to prepare your tax returns? So we're going to talk about some of the warning signs, things to be concerned about, and when you see some of these things happening, um, how to correct it and make sure you are protected because tax preparers come and go. The good ones stick around, and we're going to talk about that in depth on some of the things to avoid. And there are a lot of traps out there. There's a lot of bad information too. Welcome back, everybody. And just playing with I have a ring light shining right on my face, but then my camera adjusts, which is why sometimes my face gets dark. But I hope everybody had a great weekend. Happy Easter. And just want to thank everybody for watching live or on rebroadcast here on the smartmoneychannel.tv, or sorry, smartmoneyculture.tv or the smc.tv. And got a lot of information to cover today. So there's a lot in the news. So I'm just going to kind of jump right into it. Um, First thing, there's still a lot of news coming out about the bridge, of the Baltimore Bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge that collapsed. Again, this is probably bigger news than most people realize because of the amount of materials going in and out. People talk about the bridge, and people ask why don't they just remove the bridge or remove the ship and get the ship out of there? Well, the ship can't move right now because the bridge being on top of it has pushed it down into the bottom of the river. So it's currently stuck on the bottom of the river because the bridge is on top of that. So they have to remove the bridge, get the ship out of there, and then to allow for traffic to go back and forth, they have to cut up and remove the rest of the bridge before they can even start to look at repairs. Now you had containers that fell off, you had other debris that's all over it, and that is a very time-consuming and dangerous process. So meanwhile, the 17th largest port in the United States is, as far as numbers of shipping, is on hold. So again, that will affect people. It will affect the local economies. So be aware of that and make adjustments accordingly and plan for the long term because it's going to be out there. So I had an interesting call yesterday from an old friend of mine. We talked about phishing and smishing yesterday, or not yesterday, Friday. New ways that people are getting hit by fraud. And this is just a simple one that people run into all the time. Someone takes over a Facebook account, gets a password, and then pretends to be that person, sends friend requests to all kinds of people. So this was a classic one where he said, "Oh, my son has his PlayStation, and he wanted you to have it. We know you enjoy video games, and he wanted you to have it. So we'll just ship it to you." And he's like, "Okay, it sounds fine." And my buddy, he's pretty savvy. He's a computer guy, designs smart homes. So dealing with the internet is something he does all the time. It turns out this guy asked for $250 to ship this PlayStation. Go buy a new one for $250 or thereabouts. I don't know. But he's sitting there trying to scam him on this, and my buddy knows what's going on. So he plays along. He gets his information. And this is where it gets a little scary. He gets all his information. How does he transfer the money, this and that. He's like, "Okay, I'm right on it, wink, wink, nod, nod." He knows it's a scam. But then he takes this information to the people involved, the companies involved in the scam that this guy's using to rip people off. So I forget the name of it, Cash Only or some kind of cash app, which wasn't a mainstream choice or something that most people know about. And then Apple, he's using Apple products. And again, not trying to target Apple here. It's a large company. But my buddy tried to get a hold of Apple, tried to report this, and he called the Cash App first, told him, look, this is what's going on. At first, he didn't feel like he got any traction there with them. And then when he did went to Apple, again, a large corporation, they didn't give him the time of day. So he's pretty frustrated by this. He's like, he has Apple products, he uses Apple stuff, but he was very frustrated with Apple for not responding timely, not taking this seriously, because this is a scam where he is ripping off plenty of people. Ironically, he got a call back from the smaller company, the Cash App company, and they said, look, we looked into what you shared with us. We see that not only was he trying to get this money from you, but we saw hundreds of other transactions where people were actually paying him. It's like, thank you for reporting this. We've canceled all of these transactions. So again, they do this regularly. It is an active thing. And how did they do it? They start off by getting your personal information. So I'm going to share an article. We talk about big leaks. This happens all too often. So where someone gets hit, should have it right here. There we go. This is from the Epic Times. Again, this is older information. It was actually seized this leak originally occurred around 2019. So it's from 2019 or earlier, but it's still a lot of valid information. So for 7.6 million account holders and 65.4 million former account holders. I had AT&T once, many, many years ago, before cell phones were a thing, actually. That kind of dates me. Or they were that popular. But again, this is a huge trove of information, and they found proof that whoever has this information is trying to sell it on the dark web for as low as a couple $100,000, but up to $1 million. That is what he's asking for. Has he actually sold it? We don't know. But this is the hard part. When I talk about, you never know how much of your information is out there. You can do everything you can to protect it. This is what these people target. And so what did they get? What information? So 73.5 million lines of information, names, email addresses, social security numbers, date of birth. Those are the main pieces of information: someone's name, social security, email address, and date of birth that you need to go impersonate someone and start stealing their identity. So this is kind of scary. But it happens so much. I mean, even the IRS has been hacked. So how do you fight this? Pay attention. Again, when you do see someone asking for information, or you do see something that doesn't smell right. So it's interesting, and I've had people do this to me through Facebook, where someone pretends to be somebody else and this and that. And I'll just in the conversation, and surreptitiously just ask them, about information that they should know if they were really this person. That's not on Facebook. I'll ask about their kids or, Georgetown. And if they don't engage in those conversations because they don't know anything about it, you can tell it's a scam. So anyway, kind of scary. This came out over the weekend. Actually, yesterday. It was updated originally March 30th and then updated yesterday. So just over the weekend. Next thing that we want to talk about here, going with this, there's a few articles here, and I'm just kind of going through this. We're going to talk about how to protect yourself. And there's another interesting article. It's not very long, and this is from a local New York news source. So I'm going to go ahead and share this site. So again, looking for tax scammers, looking for tax issues. This is some suggestions I haven't seen before and I haven't talked about before. And these are actually very helpful tips. So again, this is the whole article, just 4 paragraphs. But again, when dropping off mail, when you're sending your mailing your tax documents, when you want to send it certified to make sure that they actually receive it. You want that postmark, you want that proof that it was mailed. And why do you want that? If the IRS ever loses your stuff, and they're good at losing stuff, you want proof that it was sent. If you have proof that it was sent, in a court of law, it's proof certain that it was mailed. If you don't have that, I had one where it had a stamp on it, but it wasn't sent certified, so we had the stamp from the post office, but it wasn't dated, but we had internal proof to show, hey, this was sent timely. And believe it or not, it actually depended on the court. You had a difference in opinions between the courts across the country, but this was a New York case, and New York was more of a stickler on this, and they said, no, you need actual proof. You need to have sent it certified with the date stamp. So when mailing stuff, I recommend you don't drop it off anyway. You take it inside, you get it sent certified. So it costs a little bit of money, but it's well worth it. But they suggest if you're not sending it certified, which you have to go to the post office for, drop it inside. Don't just stick it in the normal mail. Why? Thieves, especially this time of year, will target mailboxes. Why will they target mailboxes? Because your tax return has tons of information about you that can be used to steal your identity and rip you off. Your social security number, your address, your full name, your AGI, your sources of income. If you should be including your W-2s and 1099s in there. Don't just put that in the mailbox. Don't just stick it in the mailbox and expect it to be safe. So on any checks, permanent ink, because if you've never heard of check washing, that's where people go in and they'll take the name off, check your balance account, and then report any mail phishing or email phishing or smishing through text. Report that to the police. They might not be able to do anything about it in the moment, but it does improve their ways to find this. So even though this is very short, I thought this was a very helpful article and wanted to share that with you. So some of the ideas about getting your documents in the mail. We're coming up on another break. And when we come back, we're going to finish up some of the student stuff in the news, and that's going to dovetail into what we're going to talk about today, which is making sure, doing what you can to not get audited and use good tax preparers. We'll be back shortly. Hubert Johnson here. Sorry, I got a little distracted going through all the news and information, which we have quite a bit today. One of the things we're going to, and I just want to go over this quickly, the IRS has its Dirty Dozen. They're putting all kinds of information out, and this is from news releases on the IRS website. Now, this one is from Friday, and I think I already mentioned about the ERC. So again, they go through and they talk about, and they get into the weeds. That is a huge thing. Wrongly or rightly, the IRS is going after ERC claims. If you're not sure, and again, the people, and again, they call them scammers. A lot of people that were doing this and promoting the ERC weren't necessarily scammers. It was people that had a genuine belief that this is a good program for people. So be mindful of that. So excuse me. So I want to share an article from CNN, and this goes through a few different things. And there's one part of it that, again, I thought was very helpful, and it dovetails very nicely into our topic for today. So let me go ahead and share this. Here we go. So this is an interesting article. It just came out, and it covers quite a few topics. We're going to focus, again, this came out this morning. So right off the presses. But again, this talks about they're due in 2 weeks on April 16th because the 15th falls on I'm sorry, they're actually due on the 15th this year. In 2 weeks. Why would some people have some time? I'm just going to kind of skim over some things that we've already explained and talked about. You can get an extension if you file for an extension by April 15th. If you're not ready to file, the IRS actually recommends that you do an extension rather than file a return and amend it. If you're not sure if information is coming out, you can always amend it too. It just is a little bit harder for the IRS, which is why they don't prefer it. And it costs a little bit more to have a tax professional actually amend your return. So if you were in a federal disaster area, we've been talking about that. There's a list here which goes directly to the IRS, things you can look for disaster relief by state. So again, that's very helpful. So some of the little things is making sure tax return is done correctly, make sure you have all the key documents. If you know there's something out there, file an extension and get your transcripts into May. They talk about the child tax credit expansion. Who knows? Congress. I want to hold your breath for them to actually do that. Last minute deduction for 23. So even though we're already in 2024, if you make local contributions, if you make charitable contributions, if you make contributions to your IRA, you can still improve your taxes for the previous year. So the deadline for most of the stuff is actually April 15th, rather than it's not a December 31st deadline for that. This is what I really want to dive into, and I'm going to spend more time on this. Make sure your tax preparer used is reputable. And this really goes into how to avoid audits. Again, it talks about tax refunds, way to track it, but really this is and it's just a couple paragraphs here, but it's very important. They link to some IRS sites that I'm going to be sharing and discussing in more detail. Basically, if it doesn't sound right, if it doesn't feel right, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't. So people ask, they think that anybody that has a P10, anybody that can file a tax return, you should be able to trust them, or you should think. But just like going to a mechanic, there's plenty of bad mechanics out there. There's some good ones. There's some great ones that I rely on regularly, but there's some people that will really rip you off. And unfortunately, it's the same for tax preparation. They get a lot. So there's people out there that they think if they blur the lines, and sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. So again, I represented one individual who prepared taxes for an H&R Block for a few years and learned how to do basic 1099 W-2 returns, very simple returns. And at first she just started doing it for herself, and then she started doing it for some friends. And then as she did more and more of them, she felt, okay, well, I can take on more challenging returns. And she would always max out the refund for them. So she would look up different things, and but she didn't have any formal training. She wasn't a CPA. She was just started filing all these returns. And the more returns she filed, the more a red flag was being raised with the IRS. So if you have someone that, again, if it's too good to be true, if there's funny stuff about it. So one of the things they mentioned in this article, They ask you to sign a blank return. Never, ever do that. They refuse to sign it as your preparer, which means they're not taking personal responsibility for what's on your return, and they should. Or fails to give you a copy of your return, you should always get a copy of your return. Hands down. Then, again, this is you go, and we're going to go to the IRS website and click, through this article. But again, this is where you're exposing yourself to trouble and issues. So, in this particular story, true story, this lady was out preparing tax returns, started doing Schedule C, she started doing profit and loss statements, and she wasn't formally trained on how to do this. So part of this was, again, she just was biting off more than she could chew. But again, people came to her, family, friends, and then other people, as she did her returns, the word kind of spread that she was getting top refunds for people. And so she just moved the numbers around to get a better refund, because then people were happy and they would come back and pay her the next year, etc. She had a small, decent small little side business going on. She got audited as a tax preparer. So the IRS not only went through and audited her, and she ended up going and serving some jail time for this. So again, very, very serious. They came in, they raided her home, they took all her computers, they took all her files. She'd been under criminal investigation for a while, and when they determined that, look, this is a big problem, they came in, they treated her just like any criminal and charged her and prosecuted her as a criminal. In this case, she had a career working for the U.S. government, had a decent career. This is a side business. She didn't need it, but it helped make the bills. And in the end, it burned her really bad, and it burned a lot of the people involved really bad. So again, kind of scary. And she had to deal with all kinds of penalties and interest coming out. This, it was close to $1 million that she owed coming out of prison. And she was barred as part of her sentencing from ever preparing tax returns again, including her own. First time I've ever seen that. So I've seen other tax preparers, and I've helped tax preparers go through these audits where they weren't doing things exactly right. Some of the, one case in particular, he was just a little fast and loose with the facts, and it was my job to try to limit the audit. And we helped implement a lot of changes so he wouldn't have these issues moving forward. He faced a hefty civil penalty, but avoided any criminal prosecution. So he was very happy with what we did for him. But again, if you don't have someone that has their books together, they don't have a good plan, they don't come off as professional, it can be very scary. So I see this all the time where people go and they use a tax preparer. Turns out they messed up their returns for years. And I can't tell you how many times the tax preparer said they specialized with police officers. One case in particular. They swore up and down that they knew exactly how to save them the most money as police officers. Well, how they did it is they claimed a lot of exemptions that they weren't really entitled to. They pushed the envelope as much as they could, got them nice fat refunds, everybody liked them, a whole bunch of police officers signed up with this tax preparer, and then they all got audited. So it's not worth it. And it's not just tax preparers. I mean, I can share story after story. Here's a classic story of someone who went online, and again, whether or not the whole federal income tax is legal per the Constitution, I'm not even going to touch that with a 50-foot pole. Again, the courts have decided back in the early 1900s that yes, income tax was legal per the Constitution, and nobody's going to overturn that. Nobody's going to fight that. So you can claim this person, that person said it's illegal, and if I declare myself my own country or citizen, it makes no sense legally in the courts, and you will get hammered for it. So true story. Um, this one gentleman decided to open his own business, put everything in the name of the business, his home, his car, everything in the name of the business. And then he wrote everything off as a business expense. So he was claiming zero income year after year. And then he got audited. Because of course it doesn't make sense long term. How are you working? How are you running a business? How are you having all kinds of money thrown through your business accounts? He claimed he didn't have any personal accounts. Someone told him to set up his business this way. Someone gave him some really bad advice. And if he ever wants to function normally in society where he has his own bank account, where he has his own credit, where he can go purchase a home, if he wanted to move, there's no way he can because he has no history of income. Even if he sells the home that he's currently in, it's in the number, and then it flows to the business. It's a mess. He won't get the personal exemption for it because it wasn't in his name, it was in the name of the business. And he was trying to write off 100% of the mortgage, even though he lived there, survived there, and basically you could only write off anything in your home that is 100% used for business. I'm sitting in my home office now. Before I was, I had an office that I would go into every single day, and this is 100% used for business. There's no couches. There's no, you can have a couch, but there's no bedding. There's no dressers. Again, it's anything you walk in here, except for maybe a little bit of storage. It's all used for business. And even then, any CPA will tell you don't have anything personal in there. If it's just for the business, 100% for the business, you can write it off. That is one of the biggest issues that people run into is when they use a home office and then they mix business with pleasure. Even using that as a guest room is against the law. So if you live in it, you cook your meals in it, and the guy called his kitchen a break room, even though it was a normal full-on kitchen. It was crazy. And it affected him personally. So I'm kind of going on to a little bit too long with these stories. So I'm going to jump back to the article. So when we get back to, I'm going to go ahead and share this. This is again part of the IRS's Dirty Dozen of scams to watch for. And I just want to make sure I have the right one real quick. It's tax avoidance schemes and okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to go over. There's one Dirty Dozen. Be aware of abusive tax avoidance schemes. These are kind of crazy thoughts, and these are usually people trying to sell snake oil. They're trying to tell you, hey, if you do this, and most of these are fairly complicated. It's not something that the average person sees. The IRS sees this, and they understand this. The first one has to do with using and abusing insurance policies to try to hide assets or income, conservation easements. One big thing that a lot of people sees, it talks about people misusing foreign treaties or try to claim that they're part of a Maltese treaty with Malta. Again, there are ways to do that if you actually have a connection with the country, but if it's not legitimate, you're probably going to get audited and it'll hurt. Big thing is people trying to hide assets on offshore accounts or digital assets. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. The IRS is going after this. I just got a call the other day. They had assets overseas, didn't really know about it. They lived in Morocco for 30, 40 years. Again, they had no idea about this. They moved to the U.S. They've been here for 5 years, and then all of a sudden, someone tells them, "Hey, you have these foreign assets. You've got to report these." And so we're going to help them out. And a lot of times, I don't see people doing this intentionally, but I have had people ask me about how to hide assets digitally. Like, first of all, the sketchier you go, the more likely you are to get scammed and ripped off. But most of these unless they're a pure scam, they're reporting everything to the IRS. Any legitimate company is reporting any kind of gains or profits to the IRS. So watch out for people selling you, quick way, get rich schemes by hiding your assets and avoiding taxes. Trust me, as high as taxes can be, unless you have extremely expensive attorneys that know exactly what they're doing, it's going to hurt and it's going to burn you. So going back to what we're going to, I'm going to share this article, and this is really what we were talking about. Stay clear of shady tax preparers, and how do you choose the right tax professional? So first of all, this really comes in two parts. How to avoid an audit is, one, avoid bad advice in the first place, and there's plenty of it out there. Like this gentleman that was trying to live in his home and write everything off as a business expense. Yeah, he got audited, and when we tried to present his financial information and negotiate for him, it didn't go anywhere. And to be honest, we actually set up a possible resolution, but then he had to provide bank statements. He refused. It was a mess because he wanted to play by his own rules. He thought he could scam the system and get around it, whereas every other taxpayer is doing this correctly. So not every, but the majority of taxpayers are out there doing this correctly. So don't fall for these plans and ideas. That's a great way to become or require someone like me to fix a huge tax problem. This is very important here. Check the credentials of certain tax return preparers. They could very well be legitimate, but if they are, and they could look legitimate, professional. I mean, some of the people I've helped deal with tax audits as preparers, they were legitimate preparers. The IRS came and audited, and if they didn't have good representation, all of a sudden the IRS can really, in their business, end it for them, and then everybody that's connected to them is wide open for an audit, and many of them do get audited. It's very easy for them to just go down, oh, we know this guy was doing this, we've already audited, this person goes to audit, this person goes to audit, and a lot of their clients end up in the hopper as well. So the best way, check their online reviews. See how long they've been in business, and maybe not just them, but their company. If you have a company, a CPA firm that's been in business a long time, they're much more likely to stay around if they have good referrals or reviews from other tax professionals. If you can get a referral, that's 10 times better than finding someone online. So not a referral, hey, they got me the best refund possible. They worked hard for me. They did everything correctly. I've been using them for 10 years, no problems. 2 to 3 years, you're still very much in that danger zone. So it makes it harder for people starting out, but most people start out working for somebody else. So someone that's been around, they've been preparing returns for 5 to 10 years. By that time, any kind of problem will pop up or should pop up. But again, be very careful. This is a huge thing I want to highlight. And we're out of time, so I'm going to pause until the next break is over. Welcome back, everybody. So again, I still have the same article up. This is, again, directly from IRS.com, part of the Dirty Dozen. So one of the first things they say is the taxpayer's individual needs would determine which kind of preparer is best for them. Yes and no. I think it's more important to choose a good preparer than someone that fits your individual needs. It's better to avoid problems and issues, audits, underreporting, etc. And it's just, if you give good information to your tax preparer, you get good returns. So again, if you're not providing the documents, or if you give them half of the information, again, a good preparer will insist on, okay, where are these issues? They'll insist on having their questions answered because their name goes on the return too. They'll insist on having it done correctly. Now, that's what preparers are used to doing, is if you get someone that's not a stickler for making sure it's correct, you want someone like that. If you get someone that doesn't care, they'll just throw it together, you're asking for trouble. Now, on the back side of returns, of things, when I'm preparing and having returns prepared, it's very different because I'm having older returns prepared. Sometimes it's just the best information available. And especially if I'm going back 10, 15 years for some state returns, sometimes we have almost no information at all, which is different for tax preparers because it should bother a normal preparer. But there's times that's appropriate. But usually when you're filing new returns, you always want to make sure they're done correctly and they're complete. This is very key. When you sign a tax return, either electronically or you go in and sign it, you are responsible for it. So I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, oh, I just sign it, I don't look at my return, I don't know what's on it. If you have a great return preparer that you can trust, fine, but what happens if he gets sick? What happens if he passes on and then you don't have a clue what's going on with your tax return? You don't understand it, you haven't been educated. And believe it or not, true story, I had someone that I highly respect who had some health issues. He was making mistakes and didn't even realize it. So again, it was one of those things where he was having little memory lapses from small seizures, didn't even understand what was going on. And he's still a great preparer, but he's had to realize what was going on, get treated, get medication. So sometimes it's not even done intentionally by the tax preparer, or sometimes they get overwhelmed, they have a divorce going on or a death in the family. Life happens. So that's why you're the one that signed this. You're the one that's ultimately responsible for it being correct. Now, again, if they don't have a P10 number, run for the hills. Don't have them touch your return. So be choosy about who you use to prepare your returns. Make sure they are a good preparer, that they have a history, or if they're brand new, that they're starting with an excellent firm that's going to teach them. And when someone has 5 to 10 years experience, they should have been fairly consistent. Sometimes they move up from one firm to another, but these are usually fairly reputable firms. There's a huge lack of new CPAs and tax preparers. So it's a great industry to get into. And most of the good ones, they get hired and they stay employed. So again, I know plenty of excellent tax preparers, CPAs. Some of them, many of them are very reasonable with their fees. If they're a little more pricey, it's because they're excellent, and I refer the harder cases to them, and they charge for their expertise. So it says, don't get ghosted. If you have someone that's only had shop up for a couple of years, you would want to know, where did you come from, what was going on. And so these are some of the issues to be aware of. Okay, when the tax preparer is unwilling to sign or put their name on the tax return, they'll refuse to sign it, or put their PTIN on it. It's required by law if they prepare a return that they put their PTIN on it, so that way the IRS knows who actually put this together. If someone's not willing to sign it or put their PTIN on it, run from the hills. This is not a reputable tax preparer. So again, the preparer might be looking to make a quick profit, a quick buck, or they might charge fees based on the size of the refund. If you have people doing that, run. So again, if they disappear, which I've seen happen so many times, they might even have a shop, they might have a shingle up, and again, it's very, very easy for tax preparers to disappear, and some of them make a habit of it. Never sign a blank or incomplete return. I'll make these fixes later. No, have them fix it, make sure it's done, and then sign the return. Cash only payment. Another huge red flag without providing a receipt. If you have someone inventing false income to get more tax credits, run for the hills. You're asking for an audit. Again, the IRS computers can pick up where people are manipulating information just to get more refunds. Fake deductions. This is much more common. Or they claim things that have never been claimed before. Now, if they should be able to explain why these are valid, if they should be able to explain why. And again, if this is a newer preparer, if things don't smell right, get a second opinion. Go to someone that's not connected to them, and someone reputable, and get a second opinion. You might have to pay a couple $100s for it, but it's much paying a couple $100 is so much better than having an IRB, because when you get audited, then you have to hire either a CPA to handle the audit, or if it gets nasty enough, you'll hire a firm like mine to handle the audit and deal with any resulting balances. So this is a huge flag. Any refunds should go directly to you. Can't tell you how many times this has happened. So if we direct the refunds into their account, an account that's controlled by them or the company, not the taxpayer's account, huge red flag. And I know there's plenty of companies like H&R Block, Jackson Hewitt, Liberty Tax, where they'll take their fee from the return, but everything else should be directed directly into your account. So again, you can report them and report these actions by using Form 14157, a complaint against tax return and tax preparers. So again, this is, here's another one, Form 14242, report suspected abuse of tax promotions or preparers. So normally I have better stories of when this has happened. It happens so much that it's kind of like, we've seen it so much, so it doesn't really stick in my memory. Just the details. It just happens so often. There was a police one, but people come to me all the time and say, "Hey, I used this guy for a few years. Then I can't find him. Can't find him anywhere. It's possible they moved, but it's very possible they got investigated. So if they're not doing everything correctly, be very, very aware. The person that's going to get burned is you. So protect yourself. If you have questions, who do I use? Is there someone you would refer me to? We give out referrals all the time. So if you're concerned, if you have someone that's been a little shady, get the information you can from them. If you don't have a copy of your return, you can go to irs.gov or have a tax professional pull your tax transcripts. You can get those for the last 3 years. So get that information, and it will absolutely help you to make sure that you're filing correct returns. And again, if they don't give you a return, if they don't follow some of the suggestions here, get somebody else. And I joke around, but it's very true, which is why it matters. If finding a good tax preparer is like finding a great mechanic. Once you find them, hold on to them, but don't be afraid of getting a second opinion because people age. I can't tell you how many times people told me I had a great tax preparer, and then he died. So if they're not part of a firm where someone else can jump in, if you refer to someone, get a referral, check them out online, make sure they have the website, that they've been in business for some time, at least 5 years, on their own. Make sure they have the credentials. Now, and again, I've hammered on H&R Block and Liberty Tax and Jackson Hewitt a lot. If you have more complicated returns, there are plenty of CPAs, there are plenty of tax preparers that charge similar rates, sometimes less, and they do a much better job. So don't be afraid. Going and seeing a CPA might be intimidating just because they have the letters next to the name. It just means they have a lot more training. They got a 4-year degree in this, and they're usually much better trained and have better information on how to take care of you. And again, there's good and bad CPAs as well as any other profession, but for the most part, people are taken care of better. And I have plenty of tax preparers too that do an amazing job, do excellent work, and they take care of people in a reasonable manner as well. So if you have questions, if you need someone to prepare your returns, if someone messed up your returns, you can always amend them. And again, if you need a referral, give us a call, guardiantaxlaw.com or 520-485-7371. You can always email us, excuse me, at info@guardiantaxlaw.com as well. So you might wonder, how can I find a tax preparer for someone in New York and one day Florida the next, and then California the next day? Because I'm part of a network of professionals, and we have connections all across the country. And when we recommend someone, we just don't pull their name from this network. We check them out ourselves. We pull up their reviews. We will call often and speak to them before actually sending the referral over. So we do our due diligence to send over good referrals. And do they work every time? No. Do they work plenty of times? Absolutely. And so we have developed contacts across the country and have people that we can refer you to. But a lot of times it doesn't have to be someone local. If you prefer someone local, we can find someone most of the time that is local. There are some exceptions. I had a hard time finding someone in Guam. The time zone difference, there's a communication barrier there, so it's just a lot harder to find someone in Guam. But we were able to do so after quite a bit of effort. So the main takeaway from today: if it sounds too good to be true, get a second opinion. If they're not doing things right, they're not giving you copies of your returns, they're not signing or putting their name and information on the tax return, be very cautious about it. So again, protect yourself. It's filing tax returns. Yes, it should be someone that tries to save you as much money within reason as possible, and that's that within reason caveat. That's what catches people if it sounds too good to be true. And when I talk to people for tax resolution firms, the same thing applies. I'll go through and say, hey, if you want to jump through and do some pretzels and we qualify for this, but it would be a lot of work. It would be really difficult, but we can, work with you. But are you willing to do that? Is that something that makes sense? And a lot of people say, no, it just doesn't make sense. I said, okay, that's fine. I get you. We're just, but we do give you your options and explain the good, bad, and the ugly. If someone doesn't explain the good, the bad, and the ugly to you, probably not your best bet. So again, want to thank everybody for watching live or on rebroadcast here on the smartmoneyculture.tv. Again, if you have questions about any of the topics we've come or on this topic in particular, or you need a referral, don't hesitate to give us a call. And again, we offer free consultations. We love helping people out every single day of the week. And it shouldn't be as scary. The tax man, while they can be very scary, if you have your stuff together, there's no reason to fear him. There's no reason to lose sleep. There's no reason to be stressed out over taxes once you have a good group of tax professionals behind you. And that's when we can have some of our best success, is when you're taken care of, that you're doing the right thing. And then, yes, taxes always stink, but you won't have to worry about it because you'll have your stuff together. So I hope everybody has a wonderful April Fool's Day. And have a great day out there. Be safe, and let's tackle tax season head on. Again, take care, and thank you again for watching.